Good day, everyone! Sorry for the impromptu video, but I wanted to give you something to chew on as you wait for the monk video that's coming up in the next couple of days. Or it should be coming up in the next couple of days. Things can get weird like that. But while I was wondering what I can do for a quick and easy video, I decided there's an entire subreddit dedicated to lore questions. So I figured I would throw my hat in the ring and answer some of the questions I saw on the Reddit. Also, spoilers if you haven't finished Endwalker. So, yeah, kind of a duh, but yeah, spoilers. Okay, let's keep going. Emperor Uncarnate asks, can someone tell me what First Mind's Focus actually is? Okay, so First Mind's Focus is a new Dragoon trait exclusive to Endwalker, and it's the move that allows them to perform Whirlwind Thrust. It was the Eye of Nidhogg that inserted the power of dragons into the Warrior of Light, so it just implies that since Nidhogg was of the First Brood, and therefore your draconic powers come from the First Brood, i.e. First Mind's Focus. Moving on, Zero Hop asks, in the end, what does the Star Shower has to do with the final days? Ultimately, it's a scare tactic. If someone sees the sky is on fire and raining meteorites, even if those things aren't touching the ground and causing destruction, it's enough to scare people. And ultimately, that's what Medion's song was trying to do. It was supposed to scare and intimidate people into losing control and ultimately their minds. We saw it with the ancients, and when they saw the star shower, it drove them to such madness that they couldn't unsee their own destruction. Likewise, when the people of our world saw the star shower, it encouraged them to turn into blasphemies because it inserted that hopelessness into their minds. That's all the star shower was. The world's largest scare tactic. Affinity Yo wonders, Elidibus picks up two crystals in his hands. One is Lahabrea's and the other belongs to Eorzea. I'm curious if Eorzea might have some relevance in the raid story down the line and all that stuff. Honestly, I wouldn't read too heavily into all of that. I feel like they put Eorzea and Lahabrea's crystal specifically into his hands because, if you remember, they died relatively at the same time in Heavensward. So their deaths are likely still very much at the front of his mind. That idea of they're dead because I failed them kind of thought. If there is a deeper meaning there, we don't have information to prove or disprove it. Because unfortunately, as much as we've learned about the Ancients in Shadowbringers and Endwalker, we still know incredibly little about each individual Ascian. I mean, sure, we know tons about Hades, Azem, and Fandaniel now, but, our knowledge more or less ends there, mostly. But, no, I wouldn't read too heavily into that, but it would be interesting to see if there's, a payoff later, oh, wow, he was holding their crystals specifically because of X reason, and that is exposed later. That would be fun. Old Ability asks, why couldn't they use that unattuned Aetheryte teleport stuff that got us to Thavnair to just bloop everyone to the moon? Also, it's been a hot minute, but wasn't the Tower of Babel teleporter still working? One, because that technology that got you to Thavnair unattuned was experimental, and it only worked because they specifically designed those Aether crystals to interact with each other like that. They had nothing waiting for you on the moon, therefore they couldn't do it. And to answer your second question, yeah, that teleporter was still working technically, and they even tried to get people to Garlemald to teleport them up to the moon, but that failed horribly because of the constant blasphemy attacks. So they originally were going to, but it got so nasty, they were just like, okay, this isn't worth it, we're losing too many people, so they gave up. Vondrew226 is wondering, About Gaia, actually, which is interesting because not a lot of people talk about Gaia. Gaia seems to be the character most similar to us, not in a large narrative themes, but in universe. We are the current source reincarnation of the Sundered Soul of the Ancient, held the position of Asm during the final days. And Gaia was previously Logrif during the final days. And they are drawing conclusions between us and Gaia. And no, you are absolutely right, Vondru. Gaia is the closest thing to what the Warrior of Light is right now. Honestly, if the Warrior of Light was to empathize with anyone in the story the most, it would be Gaia. Both were members of the Convocation, both were sundered, and they had only just recently started to remember who they are around the same time. So no, you're not off base at all. I am really glad they decided to canonize most of the raids this expansion, because honestly, that whole story between the Warrior of Light, Gaia, and all that other Ascian-related stuff was super, super great. NG Woo asks, is crafting diminished creation magic? We can't poof anything and everything out of thin air like the Amoriting could, but crafting does seem to kind of do that. Okay, so actually there is an entire quest in the city of Amarant that's around that. So when you're going around the city doing a quest to basically get some ancient robes, your reward isn't the robes themselves. They actually give you I think it was like a lightning shard or lightning crystal, and they called that the aspect. So honestly, that makes tons of sense to draw that conclusion. Now, is all crafting in the Final Fantasy XIV world what the player character does? Absolutely not. You're not just kneeling down and hammering at a little ball of light until something poofs out. There's an actual crafting process behind it. But that's, again, you have to separate the video game from the actual world lore sometimes. But you have a very valid point, because the crystals that are used in the crafting supplement other things that would be necessary during the crafting process. Fire crystals supplement for the heat that is required from a burning furnace to forge a sword. Earth is to help make sure that the leathers that you're tanning stay in a good condition. And so on and so forth. Water for alchemy, so keeping things pure. So no, they actually did draw a strong and heavy line between crafting and the origins of creation magic. So while I wouldn't say that crafting is creation magic, I would say that they definitely nodded at the idea that our version of crafting is definitely a mild approach to what they would have considered creation magic, just greatly, greatly altered. But no, that's a fun question. Spasticat asks a couple of things. They have a couple questions about the 7th Emerald Calamity. We see effects from it through Eorzea, but do we have any information about how it affected other parts of the star, or what non-Eorzeans thought was happening? Okay, so the crazy thing about that one is that the 7th Emerald Calamity wasn't able to fully realize itself. Do you recall the cutscene where Bahamut was about to use Terraflare on the entire world, but Louisoix basically killed him before he was able to go through with it? That attack was supposed to be the event that shook the entire world to its core, because that's ultimately what every calamity has done. It affects the entire world, not just one place. But because of Louisoix, the ravages of the 7th Emerald Calamity was localized to Eorzea, and Eorzea only. Now, were there minor changes to like environment and monster behavior around the world because of the Calamity? Yes, but they were so insignificant compared to what happened to Eorzea that the Calamity might as well not have even happened to people that like live in Hingashi, for instance. So yeah, because of Louisoix, the 7th Emerald Calamity didn't fully realize itself and ended extremely quickly. was the shortest Calamity in Eorzea history. And you can thank Louis Swat for that. That's why he's considered the OG badass. And the memories of people like Cartno were messed with. Do we know what extent the memories were lost and what that did to people? Honestly, very little has been explained there. Honestly, you can chalk this up to this being what they felt to be the easiest way to explain away what happened in 1.0, create the 5-year gap, and then move on to 2.0. So honestly, I wouldn't read too heavily into that. You could call it a variety of things, and ultimately, all of them could be right. But again, this was more of a game-based choice than it was a story-based choice. Because ultimately, everyone losing a small pocket of their memories during the Battle of Cartano didn't really mean much in the long term. Because ultimately, everyone still remembered like what they were doing before and during the battle. They just couldn't remember the details. Like, imagine someone smudged the Mona Lisa. By its design and silhouette, you would still know it's the Mona Lisa. You would still know what you're looking at, but you can't make out the details anymore. You can't see the brush strokes or her smile. So, yeah. Imagine someone just went over their memories with a big ol' brush and just called it a day. And Mr. Ogre asks about the Blessing of Light and the Echo. Oh boy. So the Blessing of Light is merely the original's protection spell that also protected from ethereal disbalancing. Okay, so that sounds like that thing protects us from being enthralled by primals. Yes. However, there's also the Echo, which provides the same benefits and more, while not being a spell, but from what we can gather, it was an intrinsic ability of all original, stirred from a moral of memories of the final days. So, do they have overlap in function? So, I've talked about this before, and honestly, it's a mess because they caused a minor retcon that cascaded into the Echo losing tons of importance, and the Blessing of Light getting more importance than it ever did. Originally, the Blessing of Light was simply written down as a series of miracles that protected the people that had them from basically life or death scenarios. That way, Heidelin could ensure that her champions survived ridiculous scenarios. Because it's easier to throw a bone in her champion's direction now and then than have to find a new champion or person to bless every time. Because if you think about it, she only ever gave the Blessing of Light to a handful of people. The Warrior of Light, of course. She also gave it to Eorzea, aka Iceheart, and another confirmed person, I believe, was Cryle. Yeah, she also was given the Blessing of Light. Only a handful of people were ever confirmed to have the Blessing of Light, yet it was the people with the Echo that were credited as being immune to tempering. And it's even said in multiple cutscenes that the Echo is what's protecting you from tempering, not the Blessing of Light. So I don't know why they decided to take power away from the Echo and give it to the Blessing of Light, or vice versa. But the Echo definitely took a huge backseat in Endwalker for no really good reason. I can only assume they played up the powers of the Blessing of Light to make Heidelin's death that much more impactful. But to me, that feels like a really weird cop-out, so I don't know. Do I respect the story they were trying to tell? Yes. Do I agree with all their decisions? Absolutely not. But no. So the exact functions of the Echo and Blessing of Light now are kind of liquid, unfortunately, because they've changed so much about their nature and how they behave in Endwalker that you can't know for certain what's what at the moment. Of course, the various powers of the Echo are still active, as we can see, but unfortunately it took a huge backseat, even after being hyped up in Stormblood, after being hyped up in Shadowbringers. Basically, the writing team decided, screw the Echo, it's all Blessing of Light now. So, Yeah, unfortunately, I agree with you there. It is confusing, Mr. Ogre. But that'll be enough for me for now. I just want to make a quick video today to have some fun with you all and encourage you all to maybe think, what other questions about the lore do you have that I might be able to help you with sometime? But now that I'm done, I'm going to go back to making sure the monk video is ready on time. So you all have an amazing day, and I will see you later. Links to my Patreon, Twitter, and all that good stuff down in the description. Show Caddy, my artist, some love, and you all have an amazing day. Stay safe, my friends.